I remember thinking, like, now what? Where do I get a job? What does my resume look like? They don't teach you these things. And I come from the corporate world. As an athlete, how do we use those skills in another facet?
Right.
You're always interviewing, just like you would be prepared for a game. You're reading the scouting report. Go on LinkedIn. You watch game film. Look up who's interviewing you. What is the role looking for? It's no different when you get on an interview. You just have to be prepared. Athletes do really well in sales. You want to learn a new skill on the court, you go get a trainer to coach you. No different in the corporate world. I want to learn how to sell something, I go, who's the best at it?
What are some things that athletes can do to help convey the message, I can do this job?
So, especially when I was a VP, I've seen a lot of people like that. If they come to me, hey, I'm looking for a job, how did you go about it? I'm like,
hey everyone, welcome to another episode of You Only Die Twice. I'm your host, Warren Ward, and today we are joined by May Kotsopoulos, a former Vermont Division I basketball player, a former Greek national team point guard. And today we are going to talk about her transition going from an athlete all the way up to a VP at a top tech sales firm and also an executive. But before we start, if you could do me a favor and our team, like, comment, and subscribe, it would mean the most to us. Without further ado, let's get into it. So who introduced you to basketball?
oh my gosh, my sister. So I'm one of three. Mm-hmm. I have an older sister. She's 8 years older than me. Nice. I have this memory of her playing. I can like see her in her like middle school gym playing, and I wanted to do like everything my sister did. So I was like, let me play that sport. But I played like all the sports, soccer, basketball, volleyball, ran track. Like I was an athlete all around. But yeah, it would have been her. She would have introduced me to it.
I think everyone has like a story of their older sibling.
Yeah.
They saw play and then they wanted to do the same thing.
You just want to do just like them, right? Like my sister, 8 years older, even now, like she's like a role model, like she's the best. And so everything, so it's kind of started at an early age.
And you're known as a basketball star in Waterloo.
Yes.
A Waterloo legend.
Yeah.
So tell me what it was like growing up in the Lou.
Yeah, so Waterloo was great, like as I mentioned, like all the sports. And so as I got older, sports got more and more competitive. As you know, basketball, you play in the winter. Mm-hmm. I played on Ontario teams, so I had to play in the summer. So I eventually had to like cut out volleyball, track, came down to soccer and basketball. And had to decide, and my parents were like, you gotta make a choice. I just like didn't like going to practice for soccer.
Why?
I just like wasn't very skilled. I could like score, I was very fast, but like I didn't like the drills.
Those are skills, scoring and
yes, but like, you know, the foot handling or whatever they call it in soccer.
Dribbling.
Yeah, I guess it's the same. Yeah. Clearly I played a long time. But no, I loved basketball practice. I loved training, and I just loved the game. So I just was like, I'm gonna go all in, and did it, and probably went all in grade 10. Played like, again, OVA, played on the Ontario teams, and just like fell in love with it.
And with that love, you received a Division I scholarship to Vermont University.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience.
So growing up in high school in the early 2000s, like getting a scholarship was like not that common in general.
Damn near impossible.
In general,
So big up to you. Big shout out to you. Damn near impossible.
Yeah, it wasn't common in general, let alone for women at that time either. And I remember thinking, that was never going to happen. Like that wasn't even a thought that could happen. And then I remember thinking I was going to go to like Laurier. I was very close with the Laurier head coach. He trained me since I was in grade 8. So I was like, I'll go to Laurier. My siblings went to Laurier. It was in my hometown. And as I got more and more attention, I was like, oh, interesting. Like US is coming around. This is interesting. And then Vermont was late in the mix. Saw me late at a random high school basketball tournament in St. Catharines, because I was where I went to high school was one of the best schools in the province. So they saw me there, invited me late to go to a visit, and was like, oh, let me just go to compare against the other schools. Like, I'm not gonna go there. Went and like fell in love. It's like, if you've ever been to Vermont, it's like beautiful, green. It's very much like Canada. It feels like Canada. It's very close to Quebec. There are a lot of Canadians there, and it was a great academic school, which was important to me, and there was a program that was building. So I'm thinking, okay, let's see how this like works out. And so yeah, I fell in love with that place and decided to go.
And what did you get your degree in?
Business.
Nice.
Yeah, so I went to Vermont thinking, didn't know what to expect. Getting a scholarship was crazy. Going there, my mom and I said, okay, give it 2 years. If you like it, cool. If you don't like it, you're not playing, come back, go to Laurier. It's totally fine. Which would happen a lot.
A lot of people
then.
did that, exactly.
Yeah, right? Still happens, but definitely back then. I don't think anyone expected me to be very successful there. We didn't know, right? I was not very highly recruited.
Right.
You're like growing up in Waterloo, like you're not thinking it's going to be a big thing. Like I was a great player in Ontario, but like you don't know, right? It's America. That's where the best is. And I went there and I remember like vividly, I was thinking about this earlier. Freshman year, I'm like third guard round off the bench, thinking not going to play. We get an exhibition game. I go in, I like guard the shit out of the ball. I can swear, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, okay.
This is your
I
show.
guard the shit out of the ball.
Yeah.
I'm like a great defender.
Okay.
They're like, oh, and this is interesting. Next game, first game non-conference, they put me in first off the bench. Guard the shit out of the ball again. And I like make a couple baskets. They pull me into the coach's room after that and they're like, okay, you're going to start on Friday. I'm like, what?
Who were you playing?
We were playing UMass.
Nice.
And I remember thinking, holy shit. And I was like, oh my God. So then I'm like freaking out, don't know what to do. I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna be amazing. My parents are coming. I'm like, I'm not gonna tell them. And at Vermont, they have like the scoreboard, has the players' numbers on it. My parents see it. And they're like, and I like look over and they're like, and I'm like, yeah. Inside I'm dying. I'm dying. And I started every game since. Like I played the entire 4 years after that, starting. And it was like not what I would have expected. And like, I think early on, there was a lot of like probably imposter syndrome of like, is this really happening?
Right.
This can be taken from me because like this is really happening. And then after a while, I was like, no, this happened, and like I'm here, and it was like amazing.
So do you think so? You become a standout there, right? You become a star. You get better every single year. Do you think you were prepared for life after sport?
Yeah, like I'm very fortunate. Like I have older siblings who are both working already. My parents always taught me, like this could end.
Right.
When I was my sister was in high school. She tore ACL. She was a high-level gymnast, tore ACL. So like we saw early on that could happen. Yeah. And both my siblings, my brother was a very like successful hockey player growing up. So like I saw that. My parents were like, this is not going to be a thing. Like you're going to go to school, go do well in school. I was very good in school. I was an academic All-American. Like I took school very seriously because I'm thinking this is going to end.
You're just playing for fun.
I'm like, I'm here for a free education, an incredible experience. Like this is awesome. And then my senior year, that's when things started to like shift because it was like, oh shit, like scouts are coming. I'm getting like WNBA waivers getting sent to my school for like health, like for like physical waivers. I was like, what's happening? And so I was like, sure, let's just at this point, let's see where I can take this, but this is not going to be forever. So I was always getting ready to end and
do something
else.
And with that, you ended up going to a WNBA tryout.
Yes.
And you were the last cut in the
Connecticut Sun. Yeah. So
what was that like?
It was probably the coolest thing I've ever done. Like bar none. So it's a really funny story is the summer before my senior year, I interned with the Connecticut Sun.
Okay.
I was like, I wanted to get into sports marketing. I was like, I'm gonna get into sports marketing, and that's what I'm gonna do.
Business into that.
Yeah, and I'm like interning with them. They host the All-Star Weekend. I'm like doing all this stuff like on court during like timeouts and stuff. And we had All-Star Weekend. We had to show like Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, like the different drills for the All-Star games. There's like 3-point shooting. They're like, May, do it. I go, I'm just like hitting. And everyone's like, what the? And so the Connecticut Sun kind of knew they had a player who played, but like not thinking anything of it. What happened my senior year is because we were top 30 in the country, one point top 25, we had big teams coming to Vermont to play. So Nebraska comes, it was Kelsey Griffith, who was a top 5 pick in the draft. So Connecticut comes sees her. We play another school, another big player, Oklahoma State. They come to watch her. Both games, I'm like killing it, and I know what they look like. I know who the head coach and the scout is. So I'm like, this is funny. They're like, hey May, and I'm thinking, hi, like, because I know them from like interning.
Yeah.
But I'm killing it, and so then my season ends. I go to the Final Four with my staff. There's like a combine for like seniors play well. Mike Tebow, who now is the GM and president of the Mystics, was the head coach at Connecticut at the time. He's there. comes up to me. We want to invite you to camp. I'm like, what is happening?
You shit your pants, didn't you?
I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And like, it was amazing. And so I go with the expectation that there's no spots. And a lot of dialogue now about how there's not enough spots for players in the WNBA. It was back then as well, right? You have like 10, 12 spots. You have return vets and like their draft picks. So there's no spot for us. We're invited to go for like experience. Yeah. So I go in there like, well, nothing to lose here. Like, what's gonna happen? Who cares? I like ball out.
Seems to be your story.
I'm like playing against Carol Lawson, Renee Montgomery, Tina Charles is there because she's the first round draft pick. She was the number 1 pick that year. Like, it was a surreal experience, and I think I surprised them. I surprised myself. Like, there was a game, my parents came, we played the Polish national team. I dropped 15. I'm in the locker room after the game. Tina Charles is beside me, and the media is talking to me. And I'm like, do you see who's beside me?
Yeah.
Why are you talking to me?
Right.
But it was amazing. And I played at the Garden. We had a game at the Garden.
Beautiful.
And then they cut me because there was no spot, right? And they said to me, they were funny. They were like, listen, you were so good. You know, it's difficult with the visa. Because they didn't want to say there was no spot.
Right.
And I was like, it's all good. Let me go back. Let me go finish my senior year. Like, I knew I wasn't going to, I'm like, there's senior week happening at Vermont. Like, let me get back. But it was the coolest thing I've ever done. It was like, I'll never forget it.
Would you say pretty much your entire university, high school career combined, you set the bar here and you played above here? Were you kind of psyching yourself out to just have like no expectations, even though you were balling out? Every time you talk, you say you're balling out.
Yeah. Like, it was interesting. Like, I think because I was not highly recruited at that time, getting a scholarship, having a big career in the US, playing pro, that was like never on my radar. So I remember like when I was at Vermont, when it was like really happening, you know, I struggled with it a little bit, like with like the mental side of it. Like, I worked with a sports psych all 4 years because I was like, what could happen? Like, if I don't play well, like I could lose it all. Like, they rip it all out of me. I think that's part of my strength is like I'm my toughest critic, and I like have, you know, I expect a lot, but I don't, you know, I'm very mindful of it, but I also can be negative because I can also work against me. So I think by the end, I remember my sister always saying to me, it's a cherry on top. Playing pro was the cherry on top. This is not gonna be forever. Yeah. Enjoy it. Enjoy it's the cherry on top, because it just, one after the other, it just was one of those things where like, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe this is happening. Because I wasn't expecting it, right? Yeah. I'm like this kid of immigrant parents in Waterloo. I'm not very tall, right? Like, when I was growing up in high school, I couldn't really shoot that well. And then I finished Vermont top 5 all time in 3-point shooting. Okay. So like,
no big deal.
I think, I know, I'm very proud of it. Can you tell? Yeah. No, but like, I think that my work ethic, and I just like grind, and I just like do the work, and I pick the sport that I like doing that for. It's always been my MO. And so like, I'll work harder than everyone at any time. And I was fortunate that it like worked out. Yeah.
Without any sort of control. You have no control.
No, you have no control, right? Because you could go to Vermont and the coach might not like you, or it could be a lot of things, right? Like, because I go to Europe and it didn't come together like I thought it would have.
Where'd you go?
I went to Greece, which was awesome, being Greek. At that point, never had been to Greece, which surprises people. I think growing up, my siblings went. You know, we had a restaurant growing up. It was hard for my parents to send us, right? So I go to Greece for the first time. I'm a first-generation Canadian, so I have Greek citizenship. I'm getting Greek citizenship to play for the Greek national team. Yeah,
you're a Cotonou player, so you're both.
Yeah, so I'm both. Very much both. To them, probably more Canadian. Like, I think what I was surprised by was I wasn't expecting. I had this like incredible career at Vermont where it was amazing, and you know, you're there for 4 years, and it's part of you're like representing the university and the town and like your team. You go to Europe, you're representing yourself. That's all that matters. And then I was a great student, as I said. I was very focused on like school and basketball, so I was busy all the time. I go to Europe, it's just basketball. And like, that was hard for me. And I think it was difficult. I know you played in Europe, so like, it gets lonely. Oh yeah. It gets kind of boring at times, which is weird for people to hear because you're like in Europe.
And they think you're living a glamorous life.
And like my first year, I was 22.
exciting.
I was
it's new.
free.
Yeah.
I had not a lot of responsibility. I was going out all the time. I had like 2 American roommates. We like lived it up. We had a great time. I had a great year. But then my second year, I lived alone, and that was hard. It was like lonely. And so I think it's always funny. I think people now know more, but like I think before it's like this glamorous life. But that shit is hard.
Yeah.
And I started to like not like the game as much. I started to resent the game a little bit. And I remember thinking, before this goes too far, like I gotta reevaluate what I'm gonna do here, because I was not liking it or be as happy as I used to be.
So did you not like it because you weren't having the social fun and it didn't matter as much as it did at Vermont? Like everything you did at Vermont kind of mattered. When you're playing pro, it's just about you.
Yeah.
And like did you have an easier time making friends while you were there? Like how was it socially?
Yeah, socially it was tough, because I was very fortunate. I had like my American friends, and then
first year, the second year,
and the second year too. We still had them, but I made a couple of Greek friends. But I probably didn't lean in as much as I should have with the Greek stuff as much. Like I tried to learn the language. I should have been more fluent. The Greek women, candidly, didn't really accept me. Right?
Because you're not Greek to them.
To them, I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
Right? And they all grew up together, right? And like at the time, I didn't understand it and I hated it. I think now as I'm older, I'm like, I get it. Like here I came in, I'm looked at as one of them, but to them, I actually, like, for them, they're like, she's not one of us. She just came here and she can leave at any time, which what I end up doing, right?
Oh, wow.
So like, I get it now. At the time, it was hard. It was definitely hard, and women can be shitty, right?
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, so like, it was tough, but it was an incredible experience being able to play in a country that my parents, my family's from, and for the national team, especially my dad had a couple of really tough years with like losses in his family, and my dad seeing me play for the Greek national team is something like I'll just never forget.
Priceless.
Like that, but for him, we have like Greek food festivals in KW. My dad would wear my jersey. Like it just, for my dad, it hits very different. My grandmother was 90 something years old in a small village in Greece, could see me on TV. My uncle, who has lived in Greece in the small village his entire life, could drive 20 minutes and come see my pro game. So like stuff like that, you can never take that away from me. And like, I'll never get that. Like that to me was like so priceless. So as much as it was hard at times, it was worth it. And I knew, as I said, like everything was cherry. I was never going to play forever. So I think at Vermont, you're like, okay, 4 years, you're working towards like conference wins, make it to the tournament, right? When you're playing pro, it's like at what point, like, I didn't really think I wanted to go back to the WNBA. And I think now, I kind of think, well, should I have? Like, I think of Alicia Clark. I don't know if you know who that is.
Oh, yeah.
She has an interesting story. She got cut her first year and then
came back.
And I see her now and I'm like, shit, like, could I have like tried to go back? Sure. But I think I'm really happy that I started my career early now looking back. But it's just something I sometimes think about. Is that a
regret you have, per se?
I wouldn't say regret. I would think maybe, could things have been different? Sure.
Okay.
But I'm very happy with where I am and the career I have now. And I, like we were talking about it earlier, like I couldn't imagine stop playing now at 35 starting my career. I couldn't imagine that. So I know, again, like I have a lot of respect and appreciation for people who do that. That was not for me.
Right.
So.
Yeah, because your mentality was just like cherry on top.
Cherry on top.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to move on from things they know will come to an end? Like, I went overseas, I knew it was going to come to an end. I knew when I started it was going to come to an end.
Yeah.
But why do you think it's so difficult for athletes to be in something, enjoy it, but also have that understanding that you're not going to do this forever? Whether you start your career at 28, 35, you're going to have to do something else. Yeah,
I think it comes down to identity. That's like who you are.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. Like you were, like you probably were like, I am a basketball player.
Yeah.
Right. That's how who is Warren at 18? I am a basketball player. If you would have asked me at 22, who's May? I was a basketball player. Right. And so when you are rooted in that identity, I think you can't see away from that. And I do think too, like I went to a mid-major school. I have a lot of understanding or empathy for people who go to like a Power 5, who they don't care as much about academics.
You can't.
And so, and like, it's not like in any school they don't like set you up for social skills. They don't teach you how to like write a resume or network. And we talk about this with my Vermont alumni. How do we help Vermont current players get ready? Because they don't give you these skills, right? So I think if you don't have the skills, it's rooted in who you are. It's hard, and so you just kind of continue with what you're doing. You also love it. So there's a lot. It's very complex, but that's probably a couple of reasons.
And it's really hard to be good at something that you're not giving your all to. Very few people can just, I just hoop on the side. I don't
No, it's
practice.
a full-time.
Exactly.
Full-time job.
So how did your career come to an end?
Yeah, so my second year, I was, as I said, like started not enjoying it. And so I really, that summer was like, I need to just get one summer of national team done. Because previously, the first summer, I didn't have my passport in time. Second summer, I got hurt. Third summer, I was like, I need to just get one summer for my dad.
Oh, okay.
And so I kind of knew, I was like, this is probably the end. What am I going to do? And so I started laying the bricks of like what could be next. And my Vermont head coach got a job at UMass. After I graduated, we had like one of the best successful teams at Vermont. So she got a bigger job, goes to UMass, and they needed an open director of ops, director of basketball ops spot. It's like, this makes a lot of sense. It's like a transition out of the game without being so completely outside of it. Yeah. And maybe I want to go to school. Maybe I want to coach. I don't know. But this is a soft landing of like transition. So I was actively interviewing while I was in Europe, and they had no idea. I remember like my last game, in my last game, I knew it was the last game. I could like see myself there. And I walked in knowing it. And I think that was hard. If a regret would be like enjoying that more.
How'd you feel?
I felt weird. I don't know if I was sad. I was like, this is it. I don't think I was as happy as I would have wanted to be in that moment. So I think of like Megan Rapinoe, right? Ali Krieger just finished. Ali Krieger on top wins NWSL championship. I'm like, it's amazing, right? Like for me, I wasn't as happy as I wish I was in that moment, but I think that it was only going to get worse, and I didn't want it to be in a place where I resented something that gave me all these crazy experiences, right? And so I walked away, which I feel very fortunate about, because not everyone can. I chose to leave, and I was able to go somewhere to still be in the game, to help myself evaluate like what was going to happen next.
Yeah, well, by force or by choice, right? That's what they said.
Yeah, and like here. That's not normal. That's not common, I guess. Not normal is not the right word. It's not common. I felt lucky that I did that, but I also like, I think because I always knew this was never going to last that long.
Right.
Like I focused a lot in school. Like I really made sure I did what I could, because I didn't think it was going to be forever. Because to me, it was like crazy. It was everything was cherries.
So you stopped playing. You go to UMass.
Yep.
And then what happened there?
So I go to UMass. I'll never forget. I go to UMass. I'm around basketball every day. I barely touch the ball. I'm at practice every day. I barely touch the ball.
So then you didn't miss it.
I think I was like struggling with it.
You were checked out.
I think I was like, I need to really separate more. Like I think I was like, I don't want to touch the ball. And like Deauville spots, you're not on-court coaching. You're not allowed to technically by the NCAA. So I could like kind of hide behind that, and I would just like kind of hang out. I really liked the like sports, like the business side of it. So I was like leaning into that. I enjoyed it. Quickly realized I didn't want to coach. I'll never forget. We played UMass every year at Vermont. UMass has like probably 10x the budget that Vermont had. Man, we used to, my senior year, we beat them by 40. I go to UMass, these girls are so entitled. And I was like, this is crazy. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't feel comfortable resting my livelihood on a 20-year-old, on a 22-year-old. I have a lot of respect and empathy for coaches. I have so much respect, because that is hard. Your job security is reliant on a 20-year-old who's going through, God knows what they're going through. Like I remember when I was at 20, like you're going through hormone changes, all these things, you're navigating who you are. And like your performance as an athlete is driving the livelihood of a 45-year-old person.
You know, I've never thought about it from that. That is insane.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not, it's so funny. I can see her face. It was like one of our freshman point guards, just like entitled attitude. I was like, I would have kicked your ass. And you got here?
I know.
Right? And so, and like, you know, we're a mid-major school, like, who like we were bigger than we should have been, and like all that. But I just like, that really bothered me. And I was like, I don't want to be a coach. And again, I have friends that are coaches. I respect it so much.
Same here. I couldn't do it.
But like, even see this shit now, like with what's going on with NIL. Yeah, right? Like, it's even worse. It's even worse.
I couldn't imagine. With someone like myself.
Yeah, totally. Because it's not just like on court, you got like academic stuff, you got social stuff. There's all kinds of stuff, right? Yeah. And so I was like, this is not for me. I was thinking, do I go back to school? And then unfortunately, my grandfather passed.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm very close with my family, and I remember being at UMass. I didn't know he had like a kidney heart failure, and I don't even know if my family really realizes like this is what the catalyst was. But the next morning, I found out that he passed. The night before, my whole family was able to go to the hospital to say goodbye, but I was away. So they tell me after, and I remember like I'm thinking, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I was like, what is it? I don't want to do this.
What's the point?
What's the point? Family. I need to be closer to my family. At that point, I've been gone for 7 years. And so I was like, that's it. It's time to figure out going back. And so I was like, that was like, I didn't want to do it. And then that happened. I was like, it's time to go back.
So your playing career over, brief, I want to say coaching career.
Realized didn't want to fully coach. Yeah.
Brief career in basketball operations. Yeah. You moved back to Toronto, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I came right here.
You came here.
Yeah.
And then you decided to get into the fantastic world of tech sales.
Yes. So I actually got that job while at UMass.
You've just been
I'm a savvy one. No.
Yeah, you've been hustling the system. You got a job in the States in Greece, and you got a job in Toronto.
I honestly, my siblings are like super successful here, and so I have like them giving me example and helping me, and my parents too. Like, we had a restaurant growing up, so like tough business, like always trying to like hustle and grind. So like just like how we are wired as kids. And so I got the job at Salesforce. My brother was there.
Oh, okay. So
he referred me in. Yeah.
Okay.
I got an entry level role, and I actually talked about this yesterday with someone. They were asking me like, "How did you do that?" And it was funny because you interview and they're like wanting experience in sales, quota carrying experience, and they're like, "Tell me how." Like, and so I basically was like, "Listen, you're a professional athlete. Your quota is your stat sheet. Your performance every day dictates you get paid that week." Dictates your next contract. So like I know quota. I just know quota in a different output. And I use that story of like I get it every day. I had to input these inputs every day to drive in practice to get to the game. My expectation was to score X amount of points, stop the defender, whatever I had to do. It's no different than having to close a deal. Just the input and output is different. And they were like, okay. And they hired me as like a junior sales rep, the lowest level you can get at that company. And, it's at that point I was really out. That was like basketball was over. Came to Toronto, and I think I overextended into corporate tech, and it was very easy at Salesforce, as you probably know. You were there for a little bit. Like very high culture, very like drink the Kool-Aid, you're young, everyone's running around you, you're like making money, so you're like in it. You're in it, and it was a good probably landing place for me now thinking back to it, because I overextended, like how do I separate May the basketball player to May now this person in Toronto. And I really dove into Salesforce, and I was there for 9 years, and I did a ton of roles, and it was, I think now looking back, was a good transition because I overextended so much to build this new identity.
How much did you prepare for your interview with Salesforce?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, I don't play around when it comes to interviewing. Yeah, I don't. I was fortunate, of course, my brother is coaching me through it and practicing. Like I treated it like I would practice, like get ready for a game.
Right.
Like you basically interview every time you interact with someone, right? Yeah. Too. So, but I like prepped, I like practiced, I got ready, and I crushed it.
So you literally started off at the bottom of the barrel at Salesforce, and you got yourself up to a regional VP.
Yeah.
In a span of 9 years. What skills do you think as an athlete helped you achieve that? How are you so successful? That's not an easy company to move up at. Like even though your brother helped you get in, I got a referral too. Same sort of situation.
Very common. Yeah.
I sold my store. I had a bit more of experience in terms of like actual recruiting, but how did you go ahead and do that?
Yeah. I think, if you think about as an athlete, we are trained to be intrinsically motivated. Like no one's gonna tell me to work hard.
No.
That's me every day.
Yeah.
No one's gonna tell me to do better. I'm my toughest critic. It's, as I mentioned, it's a great thing for me. It can also be a crutch or like a detriment sometimes. I learn. I'm like trying to figure out. I have no ego when it comes to like if I need to learn something, I ask who do I go follow to ask.
Yeah.
Right. You need to learn how to like. You want to learn a new like skill on the court. You go get a trainer to coach you to that skill. No different in corporate world. I want to learn how to sell something. I go, who's the best at it? Like I just was like hustling and trying to figure it out every step of the way. And I think that as an athlete that helps. And you know how to work in a team, you know how to like when to lead, when to not. Like all that is tangible things that are important in a corporate company that athletes do really well in sales, right? We hustle and get after it and like we're gonna work harder than ever, a lot of people. So I think that really led well for me and got me to a place where then I became a leader. And yeah, I don't think about it as it was like so crazy in 9 years, but I did a lot of roles in 9 years. And so when it all ended, it was obviously a surprise.
We'll get to
that. We'll get to that. But now like I have a lot of gratefulness for the time there because I learned a lot. And I think it really helped with like that transition outside of basketball. And I was able to lean on all my skills as an athlete and to do well there.
And did you have a difficult time adjusting from like the freedom you had in whether you played pro, in terms of the time you had, the freedom you had when you were at UMass, to like a 9-to-5 stringent lifestyle? Was that a difficult transition at all?
No, because I think I really like structure. I like structure, and I like to be busy. I think that's why I thrived at Vermont, because I was a student athlete. Like I was very much both.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I got bored in Europe because I was just one. Where like I do well with like structure, being busy, having like a set routine. Like I really liked it. So that to me that was never hard.
What are some techniques or strategies that other people can use to when they're going through their own version of this?
As it relates to the transition, or
yeah, it relates to going from a stringent like 9-to-5 lifestyle, or better yet, in reverse.
Yeah.
You're going from all the freedom and time to a stringent lifestyle.
Yeah, I think I would say if you're like a professional athlete, you have a set schedule.
Yes, you do.
It's maybe different. But like you probably lift in the morning, or you get shots up in the morning, you go to practice, like you are eating at certain times. Like think about like the crazy shit that LeBron does. Like that's very strict, and it's obviously that's at the highest level. I think it's more just like thinking of like this is your new practice. This is like this is your new training program. This is what it looks like, and you just got to adapt in that way. Because it's really it's just different, but it's not that different. Yeah.
Most athletes I know have a real, like you said, intrinsic drive to succeed. So if I'm a young person, not even if I'm 29, even 20, and my career is over for whatever reason, either by force or by choice.
Yeah.
And I say to myself, okay, if I was 22 or 21, I would probably go into the corporate world or get some sort of job. What are some things that athletes can do in an interview process to help convey the message that, listen, like I can help. I can learn.
Yeah.
I can do this job.
Yeah, I think so. Especially when I was a VP, I had to interview a lot of people.
A lot of people, yeah.
And VP or not, every time there's a new athlete at Salesforce, they always get funneled to me. They're like, "Oh, we'll talk to her." Right. Whether it be a guy who played at Duke or a guy who played pro hockey, they always send them to me to talk. And so I've seen a lot of people like that. I think number one, you have to show up prepared, because I think that's a skill they don't teach us. I don't think it's an athlete thing, it's an everyone thing. When you go into a call, either it be a coffee, a networking chat, you're always interviewing. And so you want to be prepared, just like you would be prepared for a sales call or a customer call.
Or a game.
Or a game. You do your research. So in a game, you're reading the scouting report. You know like the weaknesses and strengths of your opponent. You watch game film. You do all this prep. You're practicing, you do walk through, shoot around, you're going through their plays. So you do all this prep. It's no different when you get on an interview. You need to research who your interview person is, what's their background, what kind of questions you can ask them, what is the company you're going for, what's the job skill. Like it's no different. You just have to be prepared. And I get on these calls. I'll never forget this one guy wasted my time. He gets on and he doesn't do any research on me. He has no research on anything. He's just like, oh yeah, like Salesforce, like I want to work there because it's like a great culture. It's like, what? And it's like, I was actually at the end, I go, listen, I'm going to give you some like tough advice here.
Yeah.
But like, you did not show up well for this. Like, and these are basic things you can control. You can't control your lack of experience on paper. You can control how you show up every day. It's just like going to a game. You might be playing, we used to play UConn. We knew going in they were going to beat us, or we weren't as good as them, but like we got ready and we did everything we could to like make it as competitive as we possibly can, to show up as best as we can. Right?
That's in your control.
That's in your control. Right. And so I think when you think about interviewing, it's like treat it like a game. Read the scouting report. So like go on LinkedIn, look up who's interviewing you, where do they come from, what questions you can maybe ask them, what is the role looking for, how do you answer for those things, right? Like I think like especially now the market's so competitive, like you need to build resumes based on the job, every job you go for. No different than you have to adjust your game or your like strategy for the game to who your opponent is. Like it's no different. It's just like there's so much alignment, just how you think about it, right? And the framing of it.
That's interesting. You brought up a good point. You said when you were 18, you said, I am May, the basketball player. When you were at Salesforce, how did you introduce yourself?
Oh my gosh. I would say I work at Salesforce, I'm an AE or I'm a leader. I would rarely talk about basketball.
But why was that important for you to say your title?
I think because like a lot of my identity was around that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just like at the time was like the basketball player, that was such a massive part of who I was at that time.
Right.
Which now looking back is funny. But yeah, I would like I work at Salesforce. Yeah, it's just because I don't say like that anymore.
Yeah, right.
So it's just funny to me. But yeah, that's
after 9 years at Salesforce.
After 9 years, like that's who, like so much of your identity is around that.
What happened?
So I was laid off very unexpectedly in November of 2022, and I'll never forget that because I knew layoffs were coming, but I was preparing for my people. I was preparing for like the backlash of my people freaking out.
Yeah.
I did not see it coming for me whatsoever. And so that day when it happened, I felt like everything was, I was like, what? It's like a death. It was like a death. And it's funny to say that now. I was at dinner last night with my friend who was laid off a couple months after me, and we talked about this. I was like, it's like I woke up ready to work. I woke up early that morning to work, get ready. I had a one-on-one thinking I'm so ready to go into the quarter, and then it was like nothing. And it was like, it was over in that moment. 9 years, you get shut off, you get told you're no longer needed here, and that was it.
Yeah.
And when I left basketball, I chose to walk. When I left Salesforce, I know we chatted a little bit about it, but it's like I tore my ACL and that was it. Or like I tore my Achilles, career-ending injury that I didn't see coming. And it was dark.
You can't prepare for.
That shit was dark. Yeah. It was hard. And like, even now a year later, I like, oh my gosh, how did I react like that? But I was so tied up in that identity. I remember thinking, like, now what? What do I do now? Meanwhile, I worked at this place for 9 years. That is one of the best in the space. I have all this experience. I'm 34 and I'm like, what do I do now? And like, that was crazy to think about because I didn't look outside of that place. It was like, it was who I was. I worked there. It's like what I did. And I would sacrifice things for it all the time. And then one day it was gone. And I will never forget I called my grandmother, or my grandmother calls me and I'm crying. And she's like, why are you crying? She was so blunt. God bless her. So blunt. And she was like, it's just a job. My dad, same thing. He's like, listen, are you healthy? Are we healthy? That's all that matters. And now I'm like, obviously. But in that moment, it was so like, I couldn't see out of it. Yeah. Right. And it was like I tore my Achilles and my career was over. Right.
So you essentially had 2 deaths.
Yeah.
So I think this episode will say you
only died 3 times.
You only died 3 times.
Hopefully only 3. Hopefully it doesn't happen again.
You died a bit more than than the rest of us per se. So which was worse, the basketball because it was your choice, or Salesforce?
Oh, Salesforce, no question.
Because that was more of your identity.
I think it was more because it wasn't my choice.
So
I walked away from basketball.
So then, like, what's the difference then? What's the difference between an athlete and a job? Because eventually, if you're an athlete, you're going to go into a job, or you're going to find something else, and you can lose that as well, right?
Yeah, I think that I think because and you know, part of it is like I overextended into that place really hard. I think part of it was because I was getting away from basketball and building this new identity. So I really leaned in at a place that was really easy to lean into, right? So that might not happen for everyone. I was there for a long time and very formative years. So I think, you know, that's part of it. I do think though that like now looking at it, I don't wrap my identity around what I do anymore. I did that. I wrapped my identity around what I did as a basketball player, my identity as a corporate leader. Now, when you ask me, I barely talk about work, and I love my job. I like where I work. I like the people. Like I don't want people to think it's like I don't enjoy it. I do, but I don't. It's not what I lead with anymore.
So how do you introduce yourself now?
Oh, now I'm like, I'm May. I'm a Greek daughter. Like I work in tech. I enjoy it. I like high level. Like I love being an athlete. I love the game of basketball. Like I'm a sister. I'm an aunt, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a granddaughter, I'm all these things. Like, I barely talk about work.
That's all secondary.
Work is what is fueling my ability to do other things. And I love my job, and I feel weird that I have to I say it like that because I don't want people to think I don't. It's not my identity anymore.
Right.
And I've found myself getting way more involved in basketball now. Like, I help coach a team once a week for like an OVA, like a grade 10 team. I'm playing in a women's league. I'm following the game. Like I'm watching the game a lot. Like I'm finding I'm getting back more into it. And I talk about basketball way more now versus before.
You can enjoy it.
And I'm enjoying it. And I'm just leaning into it, even though I'm like 35 on the court and these girls are like 22. But I'm like keeping up, cause I'm like, I just finished a half marathon. Like I'm doing all these other things that I'm trying to just build my identity around versus just like what I do for work.
Right. That's great. That's my next question. What would you say your identity is now?
Oh man, my identity now is like, oh my gosh. I would say I am definitely like a daughter. Like a family's, I think family is very important. It's like an arching area of my life. I am an athlete. That means a lot. I play basketball, yes, but I run. I just did marathon. Like I'm very involved in that and wellness. I'm a partner. Right? Like I'm trying to build towards a family.
Nice.
And I work in tech, but even then I'm like whatever, because that could change. That could change. That's the thing. Yeah. Those other three things will not change. Yeah. Those other things like family, an athlete is who I am. I am building a life likely with this person, and it's funny to say that like that.
Don't worry, he won't watch this.
Yeah, he'll probably watch it and be like, oh, that's funny.
Don't worry, she's building a life with you. Don't worry.
And then what I do for work could change in 10 years, right? And so that's my fourth thing versus what I would have said a year ago.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you deal with starting over?
Therapy, some therapy. No, so I definitely, I've always been very intrinsically, how do I get better? I'm always working on something. I'm always trying to learn a skill. I'm trying to improve myself in some capacity. When I played, I had a sports psychologist. When I've had a therapist, and I think I did a lot of therapy at the beginning because it was a massive loss. It was a death. And I still find I don't have trauma anymore. I think I'm still have PTSD still kicking around from it, which I don't think hopefully it can go away one day, but you never know, right? Especially in tech, it's a volatile place still.
Boy. Oh yeah.
So, but I also just spent time figuring out who am I outside of this? What is my identity outside of this? And that's when I was okay, let me go coach, let me go help out basketball. Let me not prioritize always health and wellness no matter what. Let me spend time with family no matter what. Let's not make sacrifices based on a job. And then I try to figure out what did I want to do? Because then at that point, at that moment of what do I do? Then it was oh my God, so there's so much I could do. What do I actually want? And I spent time figuring that out. And I was very intentional with my job search because I was what do I actually care about? Let's focus on finding that versus just going after a job that pays the most or is in the sexy industry or whatever it might be.
Would you say that would that would be the advice you would tell someone else if they lose their job, have an Achilles injury, whatever the case is? what do you spend the time thinking about what you want to do, and if you don't know, try a bunch of things to figure it out.
Talk to people. I network a ton.
Okay.
That first month I was grieving. The second month I was networking like crazy.
What does networking mean?
So having coffee chats with everyone that I had known in my network about they work somewhere else. Want to understand like what was it like at that company? How did they think about what was next outside of Salesforce? Like I was very fortunate being in a place like that for so long. I had a massive network outside that I never capitalized while I was there. Because I was there.
Yeah.
So it was just like coffee chat after coffee chat, and I ran it like it was like I was getting ready for a job. I had it documented. Everyone I spoke to, I took notes. I had running lists of companies. Like I ran that like I would getting ready for a game or a job, and I tried to figure out, okay, what did I really care for? What did I want in a company, in a role? And I focused less on like the title per se versus like what the job may give me or like provide for like a learning or development. And I'm fortunate, like I'm 35 with no kids. Like I don't have I'm able to make decisions maybe differently than someone who has a lot more responsibility. But I was very intentional with it, and I tell anyone that if they come to me, hey, I'm just laid off or I'm looking for a job, how did you go about it? I'm like, I picked 4 pillars that I focused on, and so when I would do job interviews, I wasn't distracted by shiny things. Like I have memory of this one job I was like really into, but it only had 2 out of the 4 pillars I cared about. So it was not emotional. It was like, this is not it.
What were the pillars? Sorry, I don't think you said it.
No, yeah. So for me, it was in tech relevant product.
Okay.
At the time, macroeconomic climate, very difficult to sell. No one's buying nice things. Everyone's buying only need to have products, right? So that was number 1 in tech. Number 2, it was strong culture. That can mean a lot.
Yep.
You also have to dig into what that means. So you have to talk to people at this company to really find out what's going on. You need to do research on Glassdoor or whatever it is. Number 3 was comp, like pay.
Yeah.
I had a baseline of what it had to be. No, it could be more great. It couldn't be lower. And number 4 was I wanted to learn something new and different. And so I went from a 70,000 person company to a 600 person company. Salesforce is a sales driven company. Webflow is a product-led growth company, very different, and they're looking to grow and eventually go public possibly, or whatever they might do, versus a company that's been public my entire career there. When I started at Salesforce, there was 9,000 people.
Oh my God.
So like, very different.
When I got to Salesforce, it was 86,000
Yeah,
people.
isn't that crazy?
Yeah, wow.
So that was my pillars. But for people, that could look different. It could be, I need to get a job in sports no matter what.
Yeah.
It could be, I need to make X amount of money no matter what. It could look differently for everyone. Those are for me. And that helped me navigate through jobs.
Right. And my next question to you is one we spoke about on the phone, and I got to thinking about it because this is something, again, you've said a couple of things that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
And one of the things you said was when you were dating overseas, or not even overseas, just dating in general, you talked about how a woman with like distinctive titles, how that's intimidating to find a partner, and sometimes some women would sacrifice their careers so that they could potentially find a partner because you were VP.
Or the opposite, sacrifice a family for a career.
Exactly. And putting their all into basketball.
Yeah.
And I was just like, touch on that. Like that's a difficulty I've never experienced before, obviously. So touch on how that maybe affected your choice in your career.
Yeah, so I think, when I was playing basketball, like back in the day, like being a female athlete has never been cooler as it is today.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like, 100%. I always joke, like I wish I was coming out of high school now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would be at a.
You'd be beating him with a stick.
I'd be at a Power 5 school. I'd be living. My dream school, I think I would have gone to Michigan, even though I love Vermont.
Oh, nice.
But like I think close to home, but I love Ann Arbor.
Mine was Syracuse. The orange, something
Fair.
with the orange.
Carmelo.
Yeah.
Did you realize that Vermont beat them once in the tournament?
We're not talking about that.
I think that when I was playing, I didn't feel it as much. I do think that like if I dated a lot of basketball players, that would always be interesting if like I had a better career than them. That always proved to be a little bit problematic at times. I think, when you're an athlete, you're like very competitive. So if your partner is better than you, that can be difficult possibly for the wrong men. When I started working at Salesforce, I wouldn't hide Salesforce. I would probably hide more, I also played basketball.
And double whammy.
I think it was like, I had a great job, awesome. Also like I had this cool other life that, kind of like, sometimes that can be a little intimidating. I've done a ton of therapy on this. I think a lot of it's also like my own selection of men, maybe the wrong men, because now my partner thinks it's like the coolest that I play. It's like encouraging me to still play, right? But I do think that, and it's like something people don't talk about, right? And it's like, I'm uncomfortable even talking about it now. Like, it's not something you want to openly talk about, but I do think that before, it might have been a little harder for women to, like, if you had a big job or you had a sick career, it can intimidate the wrong men. I think that the key thing here is I've learned is the wrong men, because the right guy will think it's like the coolest and the sickest.
Because it's the opposite for men. Like, men lead with, I was an athlete. Men lead with, I'm a VP or CEO at a company. And for you to say the complete opposite, I was like, that's a whole other, like.
And I don't present as like, I'm short. Like, I'm not like, they think like.
Relative.
Like for women, I'm tall.
Okay.
For like a basketball player.
Yes.
A professional athlete, I was short.
Yeah.
Like,
me too.
When I went to professional, I had to play point guard because I was short than I needed to be. And so, you know, I think that I think I've always surprised people when it comes out, but I never led with it.
Interesting.
Which, looking back, I wish I didn't do that, but
yeah, I mean,
therapy, learn, grow. Right. I don't do it now.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we've learned.
Yeah, we've learned.
What does this statement mean to you? Invest in other forms of identity and self-worth that no employer or job can take from you.
Yes.
A wise person once told me that.
I know. It's a good quote. Yeah. That quote was the anchor of my layoff journey. Because that day when it was all taken from me, I was like, this feeling of like, what do I do now? Was so strong that I was like, this can't happen again. Like, I can't let this happen again. And so that's when I really leaned into like other forms of identity, whether it be getting more involved in the game, whether it be learning a new skill or being like investing in family or whatever it might be. I just like can't let that happen again. So that way, if that ever happens, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not like I really like my job, but I have boundaries now with work that I didn't have before.
Right.
So that now, if that happens, God forbid if that were to happen again, I'm more prepared. But like, you can't invest your day in one thing.
Should athletes have that same mentality?
So
even if you're making millions.
Yeah, I do think you do. I really believe it, because I remember Haley Van Lith, actually, she's like one of the top players in NCAA.
Yes.
She there was an interview I saw that I was like, she's saying it too. Like, she said everything was basketball every single day. That like at some point you have to have an outlet. You need to have something outside of the game to give yourself balance. I'm not saying you want to overextend, because you got to invest a lot of time and commitment to be a very successful athlete. But I think there's importance around building an identity outside of it, because I remember in college, if I had a bad game, I'd be a disaster. I'd be freaking out. It would ruin my whole day, whole next day. Like, that's not healthy. That's also not good for like longevity of a career. You need to have balance.
That was the same way.
So I do think it's really important, whatever that may be. It could be academics, it could be another hobby, it could be whatever it might be. I think it's important because it keeps you balanced, keeps you sane, and it gives you longevity, because otherwise you might get crippled in it. I had a teammate who was way better than me on the court. But like here, it was like I had her there. And so this got her. She could have had a bigger career than she did, but mentally she wasn't strong enough.
Have some of your teammates battled through some of the stuff the same way you have, in terms of gone on to play pro, or like have you seen people struggle with identity and figuring out what you're going to do after basketball? Yeah,
like I think that I have a teammate, I have like a former teammate and friend who still plays. Nice. And I think part of it is because she doesn't know what to do next, right? And if that's the case, like I have a lot of empathy to that, because I think it is hard, right? Or it's, I know I have one teammate from Vermont who got into coaching, like she was going to do something in basketball, like no question. She played, now she's coaching, like that's where she's meant to be. So like I think, that makes sense. But I think it is tough. And I think then people are like, what do I do now? Where do I get a job? How do I go for a job? What does my resume look like? They don't teach you these things in college. No. Like they don't, like it's like these, they don't set you up, because all they think about is like, especially in the US, what's your output on the court for us? Yes, you need to go do well in school to like be eligible. But this is your value. But like this is what you're here for. Yeah. So they don't teach you those skills. Even as a pro, this is what you're here for. Yeah, and like it's just like, it's tough. So I've had a couple of friends who have struggled through it recently, but they're figuring it out. We gotta like help each other, but it's tough. It's tough.
We've done a variety of different things. You've navigated different roles and identities. What would you say to the younger you? And what would you say to anyone who's watching this who potentially, you know, the cycle does repeat itself. So someone else will be in your shoes one day. So what would you say to them?
Well, number one, my first thought is like, enjoy it more. I think when when you're in it, I have this memory of, we were in the tournament, NCAA tournament, my senior year. We upset Wisconsin in the first round. We're about to play Notre Dame. I was a disaster. I was like so stressed. I had I felt like I had all the pressure in the world. I remember being in the parking lot with my sports psych on the phone, crying. To the outside world, no one would have thought that was happening. To everyone else, I had it together. I was like under control. I was all the things. Inside, I was so stressed, and I was struggling through it. And I look back at that time, and I'm like, I wish I could have enjoyed it more.
Same sentiment.
But I care too much, so it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Like, I cared so much, and I wanted it so much. But like, I wish I would have enjoyed it more. I think that was probably the biggest one. Then I would think it's all gonna work itself out. Remember, I used to always have this quote, like, n'oubliez pas qui tu es, never forget who you are.
Okay.
I wanted to like tattoo it.
Nice.
Because it's just like, just never forget that.
Right.
Good, when things are tough, you're gonna get through it. I did think when I had the layoff, I probably felt that way. I was like, it's all gonna work out. It's just gonna be shit right now. But like, never forget that. Because like, you got to where you got to because of who you are. It wasn't given to you.
No.
So it's like, enjoy it more, and like, no matter what, just don't forget who you are at your core, and it's gonna work out.
Beautiful. Well said. I think one of the questions I asked myself when I started this was, like, why am I doing this? So I wanted to ask you, why was it important for you to come here today and share all and divulge everything that you have?
Yeah, so it's so funny. When you reached out to me, I was like, oh my God, like, I've had this thought. Because there is a gap when it comes to athletes transitioning outside of the game. And I come from a place of the corporate world, where it's people aren't enabled with the skills they need to be successful with their transition.
Right.
And it's unfair, and it's you know, it's sad, because athletes have the ability to be so successful as a corporate whatever, whether that be in tech, in finance, or if it's creative, whatever it might be, right? It's like, how do we enable these people with the right skills and leverage what got them, the skills they got leveraged to get to where they were, like, athletically? How do we use those skills in another facet?
Right.
And that's just like coaching and framing, right? And these are things that I've learned as like in my job to frame and kind of do things like that, and everyone does. So it's like, I thought about, do I create like a little like volunteer thing, or like I like help athletes with like resumes and like interview skills, because like they don't have that, right? And so I think it's amazing what you're doing, and I think that I always like to lead with authenticity, and I hope sometimes I get a little nervous how I share too much at times, but I think it's how everyone's feeling. We're probably all feeling the same shit. Who's going to talk about it first?
Yeah.
Right? I'm the first to say, like, I've done therapy a ton. It's like helped me who I am. I feel the most confident I've ever felt in who I am as a person. But like, this shit was hard to get to. And like, me at 25, me at 30, I look back at that person and I'm like, oh my God, like, I wish you knew, like, you were more confident, or you like more sound in your decision making, because now I feel that way, and maybe that comes with age and experience.
Or just enjoy it more.
Or just enjoy it more. But like, we're all going through it. We all got to help each other. We got to reach out. But when you do reach out, I think it's important that like, you're not wasting people's time. You got to show up. Like I said, like, do your research, game plan, prep.
Be prepared. So
when you like reach out to someone to network, you got your shit on lock. Otherwise, you're gonna get dusted, and they're gonna drive right by you, right? Like, it's the same thing.
Says that's the most athletic thing you said today. You're gonna get dusted, guys. Come prepared, or else you're done.
It's true. So, like, I'm always here to help, but at the same time, like, I have a standard of like, if you're gonna, like, I'm always happy to help people, but like, you got to help yourself. And my big thing is like, always control your controllables, which is like effort and attitude. So like, that's all we can do, right? But I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we're definitely doing something cool.
Yeah.
I like to end on a game. Okay. We'll call this one May K43.
I love it.
The game is called 4-3. You can answer any of the following questions or statement below. with one word or one sentence.
Okay.
So, question 1, are you ready to play?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm a gamer. You like games?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay,
I'm like
perfect.
competitive.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Finish-
Shocking.
Right. Finish the sentence. Basketball is.
The best. That's the first thing. I was like, what's more clever than the best? The best.
Okay. Statement number 2. Greatness to May K is.
Happiness.
One word to describe your journey thus far.
Grit.
Well, May, listen. I wanted to say I've been looking forward to this since we spoke on the phone like last month. I want to commend you for taking the time to come out and speak openly and as candidly as you have, and being vulnerable about everything. I think this conversation is one that is not only helping myself in my own personal transition, but I think it's going to help so many other people. And I think it is with the utmost respect and admiration for you being here. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, from the top and everything else in between.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, I think it's amazing what you're doing. However I can help. I love this topic. And we just got to look out for each other, man. Like, at the end of the day, we're ballers. We want to help each other out. So we'll have to get on the court too. But no, it's awesome what you're doing. So thank you for having me.